and welcome. You are listening to At Home with Ifenu. Here, we'll talk about helping women know and understand their worth, find fulfillment in who they are, and in what they do. Every other week, we'll talk about your identity as a woman, discovering your unique purpose, intentionally raising the next generation, and your influence in homemaking. I am your host, Ifoma Nneka Omoni.
Hello, and welcome to At Home with Ifeno. How have you been? The time is ticking. Do you know what time it is? So I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. But when I ask what time it's saying, I'm saying on your calendar. Do you know what date it's saying? Do you know what month of the year? We are counting down to days. This is November. I remember when I had a solo episode with you as September began. I remember when I was saying we are counting 120 days. What are you going to invest 120 days to be doing? And here we are counting, as in this is not 120 days now. We have more than a month to go, but we are counting and ticking. And some people might be like, oh, Ifeno, please don't remind me about how time has gone. I don't know how 2023 has come to this point, and I cannot even boast. So much has happened to me. In fact, so much mess in my life. I can imagine someone saying that. But don't worry, today promises to be inspiring. I've brought someone that's brought hope. Yes, you understand better when she introduces herself. I've come to assure you that there is still hope as long as you have the breath of life in you. Yes, there is hope for that person that is still breathing, that is still, it promises to be a rewarding time as you listen attentively to what we have for today. So I have with me a very, very special guest, and I will delve into introducing or calling her up, and I want us to give her an At Home with Ifeno. So I want us to welcome Aba Cato Andah. You're welcome to At Home with Ifeno. How are you today, ma? We are glad to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Just talking to you a little bit, I so admire who you are and what you are doing, and it's my honor and privilege to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I got to know Aba from a podcast platform. She's also a host of a podcast. So don't worry, she'll tell us more about what she's doing. And she just released another book of hers. I think this is her second or so. She will tell us so much more about what she's doing. And she will be telling us more about herself. So, dear Aba, can you share with our listeners, what do you do to relax? Because you do a lot with people, listening to people. She's a licensed therapist, She will tell us so much about what she does, but how do you relax? Because we live in a very busy world today.
Yes, thank you again. So I think relaxing is so important. It's so important to give yourself time to charge your batteries. I think it's important, if you can, to not only fill that into your week, to have moments of pockets of time where you can just recharge and regroup. But I think it's also important to be able to, even get away from your daily routine, from your daily environment. That allows your mind to kind of refresh itself. For me, one of the ways two of the ways I like to relax is, number one, I like to sleep in. I'm typically a morning person. For me, by 5 a.m. I'm up, I'm working and so on. And so I think allowing myself to rest and sleep in is an important one. Another thing for me is that I'm an empty nester. That is to say, I have adult children, my grandmother now, and so there's nobody in the house. So my husband and I, we now, are able to plan on weekends to go out and eat, to go out and stay in a hotel, to take some trips together, trips where we can truly be what's the word, when you travel to explore a place. So we like that too. Sometimes it could be a local place, just maybe an hour away. We'll go and explore the place to truly be tourists and truly allow ourselves. So that's a gift we are giving to ourselves now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you.
I have to say this. When you say the things to do to relax, one of the things about me that I'm still learning, because I've been a typical woman who go. And so learning to relax is something I'm still teaching myself and something I'm still, with intention, scheduling into my life. And I think that that's something I believe with so many of us young women. We are so hooked on the fact that this notion of a superwoman, I can do all, I can be all and still look cute and still look pretty. Superwoman Crampo need to relax and recharge. So
thank you for that personal message to Ifeno. You are speaking to me.
To myself, that's why you're my sister.
You are speaking to me. If I tell you what time I got up this morning, as early as that, your 5:15, I'm back here. It's supposed to be a public holiday, interestingly. But because I needed to sort out my daughter's hair, needed to do something, so I needed to wake up and I had to maybe have my personal time, no matter how short, personal devotion, like that. So you're speaking to me that, Ifeno, you must take out time intentionally to relax. I liked the part you said, intentionally taking trips with your husband. So for our listeners who don't
intention. And what I'll say is that there's a season for everything. There's a season for everything. So yes, today was your day. You had to wake up and do the children's hair. That's a lot of work. Remember those days. But still make time to relax, to regroup, to recharge, to replenish, to reinvigorate, whatever that looks like. And definitely, as you grow you'll have maybe more flexible time to do it. But even for now,
Thank you for that relaxation tip. So when people hear your name, Aba Cato Andah, sorry, our guest is a Ghanaian. So what do you want them to always remember? When they hear that name, they say, oh, I heard her speak on At Home with Ifeno. Who is Aba?
So, that's a loaded question. Aba is first and foremost a beloved child of God. Aba is somebody God has put his hand on, God has been patient with, God is growing every day. Aba is someone who, by the grace of God, every day she's growing into the best version of herself. And like a fine wine, she's growing into her beauty, her confidence, her purpose. That is Aba. Aba is a wife, a mother of adult children, a grandmother, is a therapist. So I'm a professional counselor. I'm a mental health, I'm a psychotherapist is one way of saying it, or a professional mental health counselor. And then Aba is also an author. Author of a book called Reflections of a Hope Monger. And then I have my second book coming out called Letters of Hope to My Younger Self. Now, in terms of what I want people to think of when they think of my name, I call myself the Hope Monger, right? My first book called Reflections of a Hope Monger. So what is a hope monger? Well, just like a fishmonger will sell you on fish, right? A hope monger is selling you on hope. That is my platform. That is what I truly believe in with every fiber of my being. In every situation, we must have hope. We should never lose hope. Now, why is that so important to me? It's because, as a mental health therapist, when we are assessing people for mental health, when people come to us and they are so dejected and probably close to being suicidal, the thing you see that goes away is their hope. And so you see hopelessness is one of the main signs of somebody who is depressed, and one of the major signs of somebody who is almost giving up on life. And so in my career, I figured, well, if we can strengthen people with hope, right, then we are giving them that springboard to stand and to rebuild. And so what is hope, though, is the question. So many of us have these Bible verses talk about hope, and hope is something we feel, right? So many of us hope as that emotion I feel. But the definition of hope, it's actually a psychological term as well. So there's been scientists, social scientists who have studied this phenomenon called hope, right? So hope then is defined as the belief that tomorrow will be better than today, and that I have a role to play in it. So I'll repeat it again. It's the belief that tomorrow will be better than today, and I have a role to play in it. So therefore, hope is more than a wish. You know, if I say to you, if you know, I hope you have a good day, that's just a wish, because I don't have any way to influence how you choose to allow your day to unfold. So then, you know, hope goes beyond the wish, the desire, though those things are also really powerful. But hope is then that understanding that there's something I have to do, right? Actions I have to take for a better future tomorrow. And so then it boils down to, what are the strategies I'm going to employ? Who are the people, the cheerleaders, the destiny helpers I'm surrounding myself with? You know, all of those things factor into the things I can do to result in a better tomorrow. Yeah. So that is me, always finding a reason to hope. There's never a reason not to hope. Even if, you know, in a situation, you know, when I say all that you get out of it, I don't mean it lightly, but all that you get out of it is the wisdom from the situation. Then that is a reason to give you a better tomorrow, because you learned an important life lesson. Therefore, there's reason to hope.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. There could have been no better person to take today's topic. Thank you for that introduction. It was really deep. So our topic for today is the message in your mess. The message in your mess. And I think you've even started the conversation by telling us about hope and why you hold on to hope. You know, you bring hope to the table no matter the mess that we have been through. So the year is gradually coming to an end, and maybe people are taking stock of their lives and they are feeling that what good has come out of my life this year, or what good can even come out in the few days left. But with the statements you just gave us about having hope, you said something very critical. You said, I have a part to play in allowing or realizing hope in my tomorrow that is going to be better. So from the topic for today, which is the message in your mess, what would you define as, or how will you explain that concept, you know, as in that there is a message in our mess? What do you think about that?
Sure. I think first of all, let's look at what the word mess means, right? So I actually looked it up, just a regular dictionary. A mess means a dirty or an untidy state of things. You know, a situation that is full of confusion and full of difficulties. You know, a mess. We don't like messes. I don't know about you, but every time I come home, I don't want my house to look messy. In fact, one of the things I do whenever I travel, I spend so much energy cleaning my house, because the thing I don't like is to come home to a messy, untidy, disheveled house. I don't like it at all. You know, and certainly I don't like it when in the course of living, I realize, the house looks untidy. So we don't like messes. We don't like, in fact, another definition of mess is the excrement of an animal. So if an animal makes a mess, or a baby makes a mess, that means they've excreted, you know, and it doesn't look good, doesn't smell good, and we're uncomfortable, with messes. But I think what I want to say is that we have been so programmed to not like messes that we do everything in our power to avoid messes. And while I'm not saying embrace it and look forward to making a mess, what I am saying is that invariably, as we live our lives, we will not be perfect. We will make mistakes. So that's, I think, something to understand about life. Doesn't mean you should intentionally go out there and make huge, humongous mistakes. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in the course of living, as we live life, we will make mistakes. Does it mean it's the end? No. Because the truth is that when things are going well, when things are looking up, when things are joyful and full of achievements, we are happy. We go pop the bottle of champagne and we celebrate. But the truth is that we learn in difficult times. It is the mistakes that actually give us cause to reflect, to review, to learn something new, and then to change mindset so that we can rise up and do things differently. So I would never, the things I've been through in my life, either things that happened to me that caused a mess, or things that I did that were mistakes that caused a mess, though I wouldn't want to experience them again. At the same time, I've learned to be very grateful for those experiences because through them, I gained wisdom. I gained wisdom. So, Oprah has something she says that don't think that when something happens to you, this thing has happened to me, then you are feeling all sad and helpless and victimized. Actually ask yourself, this thing has happened for me. So therefore, what am I supposed to learn from a situation? I think if you look at it that way, then you can say, okay, then I'm not going to, another term that frightens us and makes us so discombobulated is the notion of failure, which is something that often comes with mess. Failure is so devastating to us. But how about you begin to look at mistakes, failures, missteps as learning opportunities? How about you begin to look at them as maybe it was a trial, right? That didn't work out. And therefore the question is, what did I learn from it? What did I learn from it? I know that nothing in my life has been wasted. Everything that has been a mess has always provided me with wisdom to consider for my life. Sometimes that wisdom has been learn to control your emotions. Sometimes that has been learn to set boundaries in your life so you don't become exhausted and depleted. Sometimes wisdom has been learn to interact more effectively with people. Sometimes that wisdom has been learned. It's always been about learning and regrouping and sometimes forgiving, often after myself. So therefore, when something, it doesn't matter what kind of year we've all had, and life is not easy. None of us achieves what we achieved because it was easy or smooth. Jesus never promised us a life filled with a rose garden. No, he actually said, in this world you will have trouble, but I have overcome. And because we overcome, we are overcomers. So the question is, when this thing happened, or when I failed at something, or didn't do what I was expected, or when this situation I didn't call upon myself happened, that devastated me. Yes, initially I must take some time to understand what happened to me and perhaps how I'm hurt and allow myself to feel that emotion. But then I think the next step is, right, I believe that everything that happens for me, right? Since all things work together for good for those who love God and are called to his purpose. So therefore, this thing that happened is not just happening to destroy me, whatever the enemy intends, but I choose to believe that it's happening for me. So what, Lord, do I need to learn in this situation? And what I've come to my life is whenever I learn the lesson that God has for me in a situation, then he moves me on to the next step.
Wow.
A mess we can look at it as the term is reframe. Let's reframe the guilt, the shame, the self-recrimination that comes from quote unquote messes, and rather turn them into learning opportunities. Sometimes it's that, you know what, Abba, this way you behaved, it is not you in the best version of yourself. You are doing yourself, your ministry, your purpose, an injustice. So rise up and be different, be better. You know, everything that happens for us. And I choose to see it that way. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for your response to the message in your mess. So some listeners might be like, okay, Abba, I've heard that I should take my negative experience as a learning time. I should see it as a time to reframe, you know, shift my perspective and see that it is in those situations I truly learn and I grow. So someone might be saying, okay, how do I really shift my perspective? How do I really, you know, reframe? I really don't know what to do. Every time I feel that the world is against me when things are not working. So how can our listeners learn how to, you know, shift the mindset or change their perspective so that the mess will be a platform for growth and for improving in their lives?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I guess I'll talk about a mess I experienced and how I got through some points about how I got through that. And I actually talk about, to some extent, about it in my book, Reflections of a Hope Monger. So I think that that particular journey started after my mother died. And this is going back almost 20 years now. After she died, it was a very painful thing. She died suddenly. And she was in Ghana. I was living in the States, and I would call her every other week. But then the week I was supposed to call her, I didn't call because I didn't have enough money on those days back in the day. You couldn't just use WhatsApp. You had to buy a phone card, right? So I had a limited amount of credit on my phone card and decided, you know what, my friend's mother is dead. So let me call my friends to encourage them. And I remember thinking to myself, your mother will always be there. So you dear, it's okay. So the next day, the plan was to buy a new phone card, because to go to that part of town where they sell a phone card and buy it. And I didn't. I forgot. So the Monday came, Tuesday came, Wednesday came, and then I got a call. My mother, within 30 minutes, went up to bed and passed away. There was no warning, no preparation. It was just that. Wow. So it was a tough thing. It was tough to lose her. It was tough to not say goodbye. It was tough to lose my best friend, my confidant, my partner. You know, it was tough in so many ways. And I think around that time as well, at her funeral, I began to realize what an amazing job she had done with her life. And that was when I began to feel a sense of not feeling okay with what I was doing with my life. And which was because at the time I was working a job in corporate America, making 6 figures, all the benefits, but I knew that wasn't where God would have me, right? But I knew that, you know what, if at the end of my life, they say this is what I did, not that it was bad, it was good. That not God's purpose for my life. I didn't know how to change it, but hey, I knew, you know. So anyway, I knew that there'll be a time a change would come. So a couple of years went by, and then the time came for me to make that transition. And that transition then meant I stopped working, I resigned from my job, and I went back to school to learn to become a therapist.
Wow.
So we no longer had our income. I mean, my income in the family. At the same time, there was in America a bad recession. So therefore, you know, it affected even my husband's income. Here we were, and we had just moved into our dream home. So then I'm living with all of that. And then one day, I realized something is different in my marriage. So one day when my husband is asleep, I take the phone into the bathroom, lock the door, and open up and I describe in my book that all I did was I sank to the floor in dismay.
Wow.
That set off a series of events where I was extremely upset. How could you do this to me? After all we have been through, after all the sacrifices and the work we have made, after now we are stepping into the best of our lives. How? Why? I was angry at him. I was angry at God. I was angry at myself. I was angry. I was lashing out, and so that was my mess. How did it begin to change? There were some key people in my life God put into my life that began to set me on a path of change. One was my pastor's wife, who I had spoken to, because again, when you're going through something, don't keep it to yourself. Find somebody wise. Find somebody who can keep your confidence. And yes, somebody wise you can talk to, because if you keep it to yourself, that pain, that knowledge is just poisoning you even more. So I talked to her about it, and I remember she would call me every day at 4 a.m. and we would just pray. I remember I have my best friend now over 40 years. She would evenings and we would just pray. And sometimes I'll just be angry and cry, and she'll just be on the phone listening to me, sometimes even singing to me like I was a little child, and I'll fall asleep and she'll put the phone. Then I remember I had my sister and my brother, and I remember specific things they said to me that God used as rhema words just in my heart. I remember my sister told me, listen, you're not even like yourself. You don't sound like yourself. You are losing yourself to resentment and anger and all that. Is this what you want? And I said, then I had to think, I said, wow, I'm losing myself. And then I remember that one day said to me, this is not how to win. So I recognized that although the precipitating trigger did not come from me, right? I had 100% responsibility and accountability to rebuild my life, because somebody can hurt you, whether it's in a marriage or otherwise. But the best they can do is say sorry. They cannot heal you. So at that point, I had to embark on a journey, right? In a journey of healing myself, of remembering who I am and whose I am, and to setting my path. For me, it happened exactly when I had started, by going to school to be a therapist. I took my coursework and I used myself as the test case.
Wow.
So it was a journey. Was it quick? No, it wasn't. Was it easy? No, it wasn't. Did I have to recognize where I also made many, many mistakes in this situation that I didn't cause? I did. Did I have to grow and understand what even forgiveness means? Because some people don't even understand what forgiveness means. But I understood that it meant that I freed myself from holding on to resentment and anger. And that was the best thing I do for myself. And so the interesting thing was that, and then I think for me, one of the things that changed me was one day I called my father in this situation. I said, Daddy, I'm done. I'm tired of this marriage. I want you to go tell my in-laws that I'm done. I'm tired. It's me, but the worst is over. If you've decided this is what you want, then you just be quiet and calm and get through the Christmas and then the New Year, because Christmas is a time of cheer. So I said, okay, Daddy. So I just decided to be calm and not angry. Do you know that it was my anger that was even holding back my breakthrough?
Wow.
It was my anger and my resentment and the vitriol that was spewing from my mouth. Because again, God, He put His Spirit in us. And as we speak, we frame our world. So literally, the world I was living in was a function of my proclamations and my declarations.
You know what you're saying to yourself.
And saying about myself and saying about my situation to many people. When I began to stop those things and I began to look into myself and understand, not that it was my fault that these things happened, but understand that it's my responsibility to still provide a peaceful environment for my children to grow up. I'm telling you, things began to change in beautiful ways. So it doesn't matter the mess. And I can't say that everybody, and my marriage was restored in beautiful ways. I can't even say that everybody will experience what I did. Maybe it's for everybody, it's not that your marriage will be restored, but God will restore you and God will take care of you. So there's never a situation that is too big for God. There's never a situation that God can't come in and redeem in beautiful, miraculous ways. What I've learned, though, is that, his ways are above our ways. His thoughts are above our thoughts. And so, therefore, the way maybe you may have in your mind for what it should look like, it's not the same as God is it. But I've also discovered in life that it always unfolds in ways that now I look back, wow, it was the best possible way for me. God always had me, in his mind. He never removed me from the palm of his hand. He always looked after me. But I guess that if there was a major lesson I learned, in every mess, the first thing that God is going to change is you. So in every mess, the first thing before he changes the outside circumstance, the thing he's going to transform is you. So the question is, you are in a mess, you are suffering. Who do you have in your life? Everybody. If you're going to allow yourself to be who God has called you to be, you should have not too many, but a group of bosom friends, a group of people in your life who can speak into your life, loved ones, wise people. If you're a person of faith, then of course somebody who is of that level of faith or higher than you, that you can confide in and share your heart with them. And so they can speak into your life. That has to happen. So you can get, I think I'm a big believer, read the Psalms. David, he would cry out to God in his distress. So read a Psalm. You'll find that there'll be so many Psalms where David went through so much that we go through in our lives today. And he cried. So I use the Psalms as well, to let, sometimes you need to let the bad feelings out. So sometimes in a mess, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's perfectly okay. Go into your bed, cover your head with your blanket and have a but at the end of it, do not be in despair. That's the thing. Allow yourself to have a good cry, but don't be in despair. So these are all things, including even something called journaling. You can write down what you're feeling. I tried that. Sometimes I would write all my junk out and then ask the Holy Spirit will come in and then I'll start to write, God, I know you're on my side, but God, I know you never leave. I know you never forsake me. I know you set my feet upon a rock high above my enemies, that and so on. So we all need multiple strategies in our lives to allow ourselves to rid ourselves of the vitriol, of the negativity. The Holy Spirit doesn't dwell where there's negativity. That's what I realized. The Holy Spirit doesn't dwell where there's resentment and anger in me. So which choice was I going to make?
Wow. Thank you. You said a lot in that answering to that question. You talked about having the right people, wise people. Life is not to be done alone. My responsibility in my transformation is key, and that even in that mess, God starts the change from me. So we should not be the one pointing fingers. But it was not my fault. It wasn't me.
in that process or that mess, God is actually wanting to change us. Oh, thank you so much, Coach Aba. I don't know what to call you, therapist or the hope monger. Okay, let me be safe there. She has really come to restore, help us restore hope. And I really like that part where she talks about it is my responsibility, to stand up from the mess, no matter how it is, and even if it is not me that caused it. Because many times we are always pointing the accusing finger, to the person that really caused it. So I'm learning that God is interested in me focusing on myself when I desire a change, even when it is not my fault. I have experienced what she's talking about. There was a time when I always be looking at my husband, and then one day God just said, focus on yourself, focus on yourself. And when you focus on yourself, what happens is that the next person, whether it's in your marriage or even parenting, you find out that when there's a change in your attitude, it's a ripple effect. Even if it doesn't happen immediately, the next person would now wonder that what has happened to Ifeno? Ifeno is not ranting like she would normally do. Her emotions are not running wild. So the person might now be like, something is really changing here. And before you know what, that change you are desiring from the other person starts with me or you, and that desire comes to fruition. So thank you for pointing us to reminding ourselves that we also have a part to play to get the message in whatever challenging or messy situation we have been. So before we continue with this conversation, I'd like you to talk about your online presence. So this is the time when you should talk about what do you do, your books, your online presence, if you have courses, how can people connect with you, your social media handles and the likes. So it's your time now. Let's know more about you.
Thank you, Fioma. Yes, it's my turn. So I'm simple. I'm across all social media platforms as Aba Cato Andah, right? On Instagram, on Facebook. I do have on Facebook a community called the Hope Mongers Community. So please, you are welcome to join that as well. And we share inspirational, things on hope to encourage our participants. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's all Aba Cato Andah. I'm a therapist, a psychotherapist, and so I work in the States, and I do coaching internationally. So if anybody is interested, just reach out to me on my website is Aba Cato Andah.
Yes, I will put all those information on the show notes. So maybe they can just click on it and connect.
Yes, so we can do that as well. And then what else? Yes, and so I have, by the time this airs, I'll have 2 books out. One called Reflections of a Hope Monger. And that is actually, and both, I'm a big believer in writing books that are simple to read, but embedded in powerful messages. And so my stories are curated to be interesting to read, but with messages in there. In the first book, Reflections of a Hope Monger, it's mostly my life experiences. Sometimes they're big things, sometimes they're everyday things. And I think that in life, sometimes we want to hear big things that happened and something to cut my head off and the Lord saved me. And that's wonderful. Right? But there's also amazing messages that can come in from, I'd been feeling resentful and this is how the Lord spoke to me and lesson for the day. And so Reflections of a Hope Monger has some of that. I mean, there's some deep things too, but it definitely has things, as well as in a few of them, they are stories from other people, but all about managing our mental health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health through seeing the world in different ways. The lens through which we see the world, the lens through which we process things that happen to us is so important. There's a saying, life is 1% what happens to you and 99% how you choose to respond. So it's so important that we build ourselves up, that we know how to respond to the things of life in ways that will allow us to win and not lose. Right? My latest book, Letters of Hope to My Younger Self, I absolutely just love this book. I co-authored it with a colleague of mine who is actually a filmmaker and a talk show host. And what we did was we picked 40 successful people who you look at and they are A game, the top of what they do. And we gave them a mandate. We said, you know what, look into your life at any point in your younger life. Think about an obstacle you faced, or maybe it was a failure, something that you went through. And knowing now what you know about life, write a letter of hope to your younger self. So then when they did that, we brought them in, we interviewed them. Oh my goodness, the nuggets, the wisdom. And then we wrote an introduction for each chapter. So it's a beautiful book. And as you are reading it, it is so just beautiful to read and hear the stories. But then you realize, oh my goodness, I just received so many messages on not giving, on not, allowing myself to stop hoping, on allowing myself to be led by God to find my purpose. It's amazing, and I'm very proud of it. So we are excited about that too. It's called Letters of Hope to My Younger Self. Yeah.
Wow. When I saw the title of the book, I was like, wow. I think it's going to be a summary of lessons those people have learned so far on their journey.
It's absolutely that.
Yeah. And it's there's no how we will read such things and we will not find similar people to whatever we are going through now, or might have gone through, and say, oh, so this person could go through this and they could still rise up and still be admired, because until people share their story, you never know what they have gone through. So
absolutely. And the funny thing is, talking about this episode, the message from your mess.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed at how many people, top lawyers, I failed. Neurosurgeon, I failed in this. I didn't pass. Well, I had to regroup. I had to find myself. So, wow.
Yeah.
This is the theme all the way through, is that, you know what? I fell down. And that's how I picked myself up. Not a single one of us who goes through life and achieves because it's easy.
Yeah.
But think about it. The obstacles come to bring us wisdom. Do you know, there was a scientist, there was an experiment that was conducted once where they took a plant, right? And they put the plants in identical conditions of sunlight and water, right? The thing that was different in the two different environments is that one had zero gravity. And for anybody who understands gravity, is the thing that keeps us grounded on the floor. If we didn't have gravity, we'd be floating like we are in space.
Yeah.
So these two identical plants were placed in two different environments with the same temperature, same sunlight, same water. The thing that was different is that one room had zero gravity and the other one had the gravity we experience in everyday life. Well, the plants grew, right? But the one with zero gravity, it couldn't stand firm. It just floats. Because you see, it is the resistances, right, that help resilience in us. So even you can see that. So when we think about that, bringing it back to our situations, no, we don't like to be in a mess. I don't like to. But we can always reframe it. How will this make me a better person? What wisdom can I gain from this situation? How is this even channeling me into my purpose? Because if you are going through it, there's 7 billion people in the world. At least 2 billion have gone through it as well. Therefore, something you can do that is teachable to bring wisdom to somebody else. And I think another thing I want to say about MS, that's also really important. And I know this as a therapist. As therapists, they say, oh, you are psychoanalyzing people. Maybe you are so clever. Yes, I receive. But it's not even that. It's because our lives work in these cycles. So sometimes there's a childhood wound, or maybe there's a character defect in us and it keeps giving rise to these same cycles of situations. For example, you can look at yourself, if you're the one who every time you work in a group, all the work is left to you, and then you are resentful, and then you are exhausted. Every time you're in a group, everybody just lets go and doesn't do much, but only you. Yeah, you can keep being angry through the years and say, every time somebody is, people are shortchanging me and giving me all the work to do. Or you can say to yourself, I am the common denominator here. What is it that I need to learn? And you can say, okay, maybe I need to set boundaries about what I do and what I can't do. See, because that you don't address, it will keep showing up in your life over and over and over again, until you address it or until you die. It will keep up. So is it because God wants to keep torturing us? No. It is because there's a lesson to be learned that we're supposed to learn.
Wow. I got something from what you were saying. So we need to also take note of patterns of things that are happening to us. If not, they keep reoccurring, situations coming back. And if we don't address it, if we don't face it, it will continue and hopefully not end us before our time. Wow. Thank you so much for that response. So before you go, I would like you to give our listeners key takeaways, maybe actionable steps or nuggets that will remind them of what you have been saying. There's no need going round the circles. We have learned that there's a message in our mess. You talked about reframing. You talked about having the right company around us, people that will speak wisdom to us. You talked about our responsibility, even in coming out of the mess, and that it is a ground for growth and learning. So like we said, the year is coming to an end. What will our listeners do, as they project into another year coming forth, so that they are not going round and round in circles, in the same pattern, the same way 2022 was, they are ending 2023, and we are still going forward to 2024, and they might just come to a point where they feel, is there anything good that can come out of my life? What will you say as your parting words or your takeaway to our listeners for them to see the message in their mess?
Yes, thank you for that. And I think you actually summarized so much of what I spoke about extremely well. I'll just add to what you've said. I think that November is a great time, actually, probably the best time to begin to review your year. Sometimes when we wait till January, it's almost the year has started and then we get so busy, we don't have enough time to take stock. So I would say this is a great time of year without condemnation, self-condemnation, because I think that's also not our portion. Without guilt, that's also not our portion. The Holy Spirit convicts us so we can do better. It doesn't condemn us to a place of shame and recrimination. So I think based on that, we can actually sit down, and I think if you do a search, you can probably find some prompts, either for journaling, to just sit with yourself. What went well this year? What didn't go so well this year? What do I need to change? What did I discover about myself this year? What maybe should I do differently? And you can begin to take, stock like that of your year, and then begin to put into place things you can do differently. I think that and another important part, and you said it, but I'll reiterate it, is that when we go through traumatic things, whether it's a big T trauma like a death or an accident, or whether it is what they call a small T trauma, like maybe somebody in my life that's causing me aggravation, or the parts of my everyday life, it takes a toll on us. And I think it's important that we give ourselves the self-care to, yes, talk to somebody, but also sometimes maybe you may need some time to talk to God, grieve, cry, but don't be in this, and that has to happen, right? That is a necessary step, even as we transition to the place where we are saying, okay, what can I do differently? So that's what I would say. Allow yourself to feel the feelings, feel what you felt, take note of what you felt, to get it out of your system, and then ask yourself, what can I do differently? I believe in even having destiny helpers. I think, and I don't know if mostly women, but even men, have a group of people you trust. You sit with them and say, okay, what are our goals for the new year? In the last year, one thing that's been so powerful for me is getting together with two of I call them my sister friends. That I have many acquaintances, I have many friends, and I have a group of my bosom people I cherish, and I call them my sister friends. And so the three of us, we would meet just once a month, to talk about our goals, to talk about the areas where we feel we need improvement, to give each other feedback. There were some months where we realized we needed to almost, when I say wail to each other, I mean, because we're all at different points in a 3-month period, we're all going through different emotional things. So we use that time to hear each other, to listen to each other, to encourage each other, to follow up and hold each other accountable for the things we say we will accomplish. That was very powerful. So a sister circle or a brother circle of a few people you trust, you feel comfortable with, that's another way, But yes, slowly, and of course, then as you for anybody who wants to set goals, you can write down your goals. You can put together vision boards. I'm a big believer in that. I'm a big believer in declarations, affirmations. All of these are ways in which we can reset ourselves and prepare for the new year. But all I want to say, the biggest thing is that there's no mess that God allowed in your life that he didn't give you the ability and the strength to work through and to gain a message to make your life better. There's nothing that makes you beyond the reach of God for redemption, for salvation, for strengthening, for a new purpose. There's nothing that I've been through that's been wasted. Everything has helped me and directed my path towards God's, purpose in my life. And so don't condemn yourself, but rather allow yourself to sit with yourself and say, all right, so I've cried it out, I felt my feelings, now what was there to learn?
Wow, thank you so much, Aba. We really appreciate your sacrificial time and for being vulnerable to share part of your story and your journey. And like I said earlier, there won't have been someone better, or even the timing. I think it's a time to reflect. It's a time for soul searching, honest, feedback for us to get, so that our lives can be the better version that God has promised us. You also said that there is no mess that we have been through or that we are in that is irredeemable. Nothing is a waste. Even those things that look like, nothing good is in it. There's something God is trying to, pass across to us. It's just for us to reframe our minds and position ourselves for the better us. Thank you. We hope when we call you again, you'd willingly avail yourself. We do not take your time and your investment on At Home with Ifeno for granted. Thank you, Ma, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on At Home with Ifeno. Check us out on Instagram at Ifeno17. As always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you fresh content. See you next in 2 weeks' time.